I got a notice that there's a piece of legislation that already has gone through the House. It's the HR 29 bill, and it's in regards to immigration and collecting all of the naughty immigrants. It passed quite easily through the House. The biggest problem is that it really reduces the rights of these immigrants who are being picked up, put in, detained, etc. So there are quite a few people, a lot of Democrats who are against it. However, the bill in the House was bilateral. Some Democrats, 48 Democrats voted for it. So it's going to be heard in the Senate probably next week. So it's the Senate Bill number 5. I should have put down on the piece of paper the websites that you can go to, but you can go, HR 29, and it'll come up. If you can, and if you feel that it's worth your effort, you might contact our local, our state officials. Oh dear. There's a list of it back of all the state and federal representatives for us. So I encourage you to take that home and just keep it handy. I think this next year there's going to be a lot of bills that we want to object to, so it'd be handy to have that. Let's hope we don't have to, but it could. So one of the things, though, relative to legislation, one of the board members, Bill Bates, is Bill here today? No. I've asked him, he's a member at large, so I've asked him to keep track of the legislation and keep us up to date so that we can be aware when and what the issues are that we need to let our officials know we don't like it or we do like it. Let's hope there's some that we do like. So, I hope you all picked up a list of the upcoming events. In 2 weeks, we're going to learn a little bit about AI, which we hear a lot about, but I'm not myself. I don't know how much it's going to affect us, good, bad, or otherwise. So come join us for that one. Same time, same place next week. How many of you are Facebook users? Most of you. Good. All right. How many of you have gone to our Green Valley Democrat Facebook page? Just a few. Okay. It came up at the board meeting. Is there enough activity there to keep it going? And George did a wonderful job of maintaining it, but now that's not his job anymore. So if we want to maintain it, we need somebody to volunteer to update the Facebook, including these meetings, all the other events that might be going on, and also legislation. So is there anybody here that would be willing to do that? Oh, all those hands. How do I pick? So Judy, all right, Judy Knapp will do it for us. Thank you. So anyhow, as long as you're on Facebook, go out, Green Valley Democrats. Up comes a lot of different things you can plug into, but our Facebook page is among them. So it wouldn't be a real Saturday meeting if I didn't have a trivia question, right? So does anybody want to hazard a guess of how many presidents were cheerleaders? Now keep in mind we still haven't had a woman president. So how many? I'll give you some help. It's a number between 3 and 5. 4. Does anybody want to guess who they might be?
George Bush.
Sorry?
George Bush the younger.
Yes, that's right. George W. Bush, Eisenhower, and Ronald Reagan. Cheerleaders was considered an athletic position, and so young women were discouraged. During World War II, however, so many of the men were called up for the war. There were a few women cheerleaders, but women didn't really become the major numbers of cheerleaders until the 60s. So, just thought that would be interesting. Kate, were you a cheerleader?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, God, what's your cheer? Should we do it?
Give me a T.
Give me a C.
Oh, give me a, I was going to say Democrat.
Give me a break.
Rah, rah, rah.
Absolutely. Okay, with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Kate Hotten. It was quite disappointing a couple of weeks ago that in the paper we got the notification or wrote an article about the fact that Hud Bay finally got the air quality permit, and that pretty much is all they need to get going. So Kate maybe can cover an update. Are there ways and means yet to potentially stop the mine? If you can answer that for us.
I might use the microphone there. So probably not. That said, and really this work is led by Save the Scenic Santa Ritas. I know you've heard from Rob on this. Now, they're going to obviously do what they can to argue against the permit and whether it was received appropriately. So whether the process they went through to issue that was correct. That said, best efforts, they don't necessarily expect that to be successful. They're also working on a plan B, but I wish we had more to report right now. When we do, we'll let you know. All signs point to negative right now, but the work continues. So, and we thank you for your energy and attention towards it. It's really, it's one of those grassroots things that when we do have action needed, we'll let you know. And you'll hear about more of those things today. So, will we jump in?
Go ahead, please.
Perfect. So I'll introduce myself quickly. Thank you. So I'm Kate Hotten. I am relatively new to Tucson. I moved here from Ireland. I was working in peatland conservation and natural capital policy there. I see at least maybe one face I recognize here. Rita in the back, nice to see you. And a whole bunch of new faces, so that's fantastic. I may be new to Tucson, but I'm not new to the desert. When I was younger, I would have spent a lot of time in the Mojave, a very different desert, obviously. But today we're going to introduce you to the Coalition for Sonoran Desert Protection. I imagine many of you have heard of us. Can you raise your hands if you are fairly aware of what we do? Oh, just a trickle, actually. So this will be great. So, we're going to start off let's make sure this works. It does. Just by giving you an introduction to our coalition. It's really important to point out that we don't do this work alone. We're a very small team of 4 people. But we're a coalition of 30 organizations. Includes the Save the Scenic Santa Ritas that you heard about from Rob earlier. It also includes some large international organizations who want to make sure that we're doing the right thing here in Pima County. They want to hear updates and how they can help support us in our local work, but they don't necessarily have the local presence they'd like to. But it also includes groups much smaller than us that we help by taking action where they can't. So it kind of goes both directions within our coalition. So our mission is to protect the Sonoran Desert and its biodiversity. Now, biodiversity is simply the incredible array of plants and animals and living things and their habitat, right? So I think sometimes that phrase can feel kind of scary or confusing, but ultimately it's quite a simple concept, and that is our underlying mission, is to protect that biodiversity here in the desert. Now, the Sonoran Desert, I don't know if you know, is the most biodiverse desert in the world. Quite the claim to fame. It's also the wettest desert in the world. Does anyone want to guess how much rain we get here on average?
8 inches.
Pretty close actually. So it's 12 to 15 inches on average per year. We heard 10 inches out there. So we get 2 rainy seasons, which makes us quite unique. So, and this provides us for, again, an incredible array of plants and animals in the world. Anyone want to guess how many different native plants we have here in the Sonoran Desert? It's not between 3 and 5.
250?
So it's about 10 times the guess here. So it's about 2,000 native plants alone. We have over 70 mammals, over 500 resident or migrating birds, and the list goes on. So it's just really an incredible desert that we're working to protect here. And this is some of the work that we do here in the Sonoran Desert. Today what we're going to focus on is our kind of watchdog for our planning here in Pima County, that kind of work. We're going to talk about our fight against Interstate 11, which I know there's a lot of interest in, and that's what we're going to wrap up with today. And we're going to talk about reconnection of open space, not necessarily our work just to protect those open spaces as well. There isn't time to get into everything we do today, so that's what we're going to focus on. Now, we've been doing this for a long time. So long that this is what the Board of Supervisors looked like when we started our work, okay? So over 30 years ago. And this is what pictures of the Sonoran Desert used to look like when we started our work. So we have this wonderful archive of work on the Sonoran Desert. And now it looks quite aged, right? But things have really come a long way since we started advocating for the desert here. So we'll start with our planning work, which really focuses on the Sonora Desert Conservation Plan. But first we're going to talk about how this came to be and what underpins our work. And really it's large landscape conservation. So large landscape conservation is something you'll see in Montana, Utah, other places with large landscapes, right? So a lot of open space that they're looking to preserve, but they're struggling with development. So we use that concept and we partner with best available science to deliver our work. So the model we're using here in Pima County, we're stewarding large areas of open space, but we're also looking to connect them. So those large areas may be protected, but they may be also working landscapes, such as ranch land that is conserved. And then we want to make sure that animals can move in between those open spaces, which frankly is not the case right now in Pima County. Now this concept is relatively new, coming out of the UN, but now the UN is taking a stronger stance on connectivity between open spaces. And we saw this happen just earlier last year. But like I said, we've been doing this since photos were grainy, right? So 30 years ago. And it all kind of started in the late 90s with this tiny little cute owl, right? The Cactus ferruginous pygmy owl, which was really, really threatened. So it was struggling with extinction, the threat of extinction, and a bunch of people got together to try to figure out how they could help this tiny owl. Now what happened over 2 decades, essentially, was what we have now in a planning tool called the Sonora Desert Conservation Plan. But it took a long time, like I said, to get there, to make sure that we could do something to protect not just this owl, but all the other species here in the desert. So our group originally was called, I have to look at my notes because it was so long and ancient sounding, the Coalition for the Sonora Desert Protection Plan. So we've managed to get rid of 2 of those words. We still have the rest. It's simply too many. But we would have worked really hard as a grassroots organization to get people on board and to advocate to get a planning tool in place. So we're really, really glad to have Pima County on board with us. We still have a lot of work left to do, largely to get the other regional jurisdictions on board. In fact, right now, we're working with Plan Tucson, which is City of Tucson's general plan, which is open for public comment if anyone's interested, to try to make sure that they also implement this conservation plan in their planning process. So there's 2 main tools in the Sonora Desert Conservation Plan. The first is habitat-based. So high-value habitats are protected, which means if you try to build on them, you have to follow certain planning rules. Now the second is species-based, which means that a specific threatened species, their habitat is protected. So there's slightly different approaches. So in one approach, and I'll show you actually some examples for here locally, here's where we are today. You can see there's some high-value habitats that surround us right now. The blue, and I'm sorry, it must be quite hard to see those different colors in the back, but the blue would be our very important riparian areas here. Now those important riparian areas, under the planning law now, with the Sonora Desert Conservation Plan, you would have to set aside 95% of the open space if you were trying to develop on that land. That's a signal to us of how important that land is from a biological value. Now those other colors are telling us you'd have to set aside slightly less, maybe 60 to 80%, but again, you can't just build whatever you want there. They're protected lands to an extent. So it's a fantastic system that we're very proud of here in Pima County. And just so you get a sense of how many tools there are in it, you can't read that, but there's many, many things the county are doing beyond just those 2 tools I mentioned. So they have a native plant nursery they maintain, for example. They have parks that they maintain, the list goes on. We could probably spend the whole hour on this, but we want to talk about things that are a little bit more exciting. So one of the things that the conservation land system does is it shows us in purple where animals need to be moving, and they're not today. And the most broken linkage is that one up at the top. So that's between the Tucson Mountains, the Tortolita Mountains, and the Santa Catalina Mountains. We're also going to talk about this linkage where we are here today at the bottom. So that would be the second priority area that we need to focus on reconnecting. Now there's been a lot of work done, especially by Arizona Game and Fish, to tell us where animals are moving, and that helps us understand those purple areas, right? So we haven't sort of guessed as to where animals might be trying to go. Now you can see here, again, We're sitting here where the star is today, and you can see where animals have tried to move, but there's a big old road right in the way, right? Did anyone see any roadkill on the way here today? I did. Nobody? You got to look harder. So now we're going to talk about that. How does the animal cross the road? Very dangerously, okay? So we're going to talk about our work. And again, it's a part of the Sonora Desert Conservation Plan. We've had incredible support from Pima County to help us make sure that animals can safely cross the road. Before I move on, any kind of questions? That was a really high-level overview of the planning process because it's really detailed and we can talk about it forever. But any questions on that first? Go for it.
So whose plan is this when you talk about the plan?
So whose plan is it? It's Pima County's, and it was designed by the community for Pima County. So, and it's right now a 30-year plan, so it will be refreshed at some point. But it applies to Pima County land. So when we work with Oro Valley, for example, town of Marana, Salarita, etc., we try to make sure that they understand how the Sonora Desert Conservation Plan would also impact their lands and improve upon conservation in their lands, but it doesn't directly apply. So there's really a partnership there, and we spend an incredible amount of time in the meetings of those other local jurisdictions just to make sure that they're also kind of on board with the general concept, if that makes sense.
Is there a federal range management plan or a resource plan that impacts this too?
So the question is there a federal resource plan or some other type of tool that's higher level than just the county, it sounds like? So there will be on some of this land in Pima County. So there obviously we have national parks and things of that nature, so there will be intergovernmental agreements for some of those lands. But for the Sonora Desert Conservation Plan, it's very much focused on the county's land. Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
On your last slide, what was the corridor at the very bottom? I assume it connected the Santa Rita's. Where did it end up?
So let's go back to our map here with the purples. So, in fact, and we'll show this in a minute as we move through here, but what we ultimately want to see is a big old circle. So right here we have animals moving through the riparian areas. We're hoping to, but the road's in the way, right? So they want to be able to, yes, move from the Santa Ritas all the way through Altar Valley, up through Abra Valley. Then they can get all the way to the Tucson Mountains if they wanted to. If we connected that, they can make it all the way to the Santa Catalinas. But it doesn't work today. There's simply too many roads in the way. And in fact, if they don't have to go north, they could go straight west, right? If we can improve those connectivity areas. So there's been some work on SR 86, some underpasses to help animals move under this road, but there's a lot of work left to do to improve that. And there's a lot of work left here. So right in your backyard. Yes?
Did they use the culverts under 19 and various frontage roads?
There are culverts, yes, and animals, some animals do. Javelina tend to be more open to them than a lot of animals would, but there's many animals that won't use a culvert, so unfortunately, yes?
Is Green Valley on your map? Because I can't quite tell.
We would be, I think we're like somewhere here. I'd have to look closer.
I'm imagining up and down I-19 for any sort of wildlife corridor. I mean, there are a few ways to get under the freeway, but once you pop out on the other side, there's still not a good drainage to travel, and there's the pecan groves, and unless you're really far south of Green Valley, you don't have a good way to migrate across the freeway. Yeah, it seems like an issue.
So that's exactly that. She's saying that as you go down the freeway, you're saying there's really, even if you get, and we see this all the time, animals will make it to the median, but they're not going to make it across the other side, or once they do, there's nowhere to go, right? So that's exactly it. You need some kind of corridor, and you can see here with the riparian area, it does exist and animals are using it, but they're having trouble right here in the middle. So we need to do something to help facilitate them there. So I think everyone here can kind of grasp the concept of why we need to help them do this. When animals get stuck in one spot, they lose the ability to pick the mates that they would like to pick, which is in itself tragic enough. I think we can all relate to that. But much deeper than that, right? They're losing access to food and water. They're losing the ability to respond to climate change in the ways that they would like to if they weren't restricted. We're not just talking about animals, we're talking about plants too, so pollination can be quite severely limited. And if you don't have animals moving around, maybe as a plant, you're not able to spread your seed the way you normally would and stuff like that. So the impacts are pretty widespread. And actually, if you note here, this is the Santa Catalinas. And look how sharply Oracle Road cuts them off. So any animals trying to move out of the mountains there. And it's not just roads, right? So we heard about the border earlier in that bill. So the border wall has a huge impact on animals. We don't work on that as much as some of our partners do, but we've had a lot of studies coming out about how much the border wall has ruined habitats, right? So again, these are the focus linkages for our work coming up here, to try to make sure animals can cross both the top and bottom of this kind of imaginary circle that they'd like to be roaming in. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the funding for this work, and then we're going to get into some of the fun stuff with the animal pictures. And actually, I'm going to jump in front of the screen here. I'm going to hand out some books. Please feel free to, thank you. Sorry. Flip through those. So the books that I've just handed out are photos from the very beginning of our wildlife camera program. So now it is the oldest and longest continuous running wildlife camera program in southern Arizona, community science based. And you'll see they look a little old, these photos, but you get a sense of what kind of animals we were able to capture information from starting in 2012. Which doesn't sound that long ago, right? But at the time it was pretty wild to be doing this. So the RTA, or Regional Transportation Authority, I'm sure some of you have heard of that. It was created in the early 2000s. The idea was to create more equity across the county and the region to make sure that all the transportation funding wasn't just in one place. So all of the jurisdictions were supposed to get a piece of the pie a little bit better, right? So we worked really hard way before it was even voted in to make sure that this concept included some funding for wildlife crossings. And you can see here, this is our founder, Kaylin Campbell, sitting in one of many, many meetings. I'm talking probably 25 years of meetings on RTA at this point. But one of the things that we're probably most pleased about with the outcome of RTA is the fact that we got huge public support for wildlife crossings. Now, RTA is voted for by the public. It's public funded. And so public have to really be on board with what they're voting for and funding. And we absolutely had unanimous support for this aspect of wildlife crossing funding. So we got $45 million, as it says here. That was a 20-year plan that's basically expired. I'd say about just over 20 million was actually spent on wildlife crossings. And that's important to note. So they may tell you 45 million is put towards something in a budget item. It doesn't mean that's what they're going to spend on it, right? Which I know you've seen this kind of thing before. Now we're up for a vote. It's going to happen again. We have the RTA Next plan that's up for public comment right now. I think I sent Sandy the details. We're very excited to have people comment on it again. Unfortunately, this time around they're proposing 25 million, which is a drop in the bucket, and there's a huge amount of work left to do on crossings, which we'll talk about in just a second. So here's what's already happened. Again, we're so delighted that this stuff's been funded. We're really grateful for the public support. Twin Peaks Road, Tangerine Road, so these are Marana. We have underpasses that help animals move. And again, culverts, a little small, but we have just slightly larger, and we're talking about a domed shape that helps animals move. When you have a square box culvert, most animals don't really want to move through them. So it's something that's a little bit more wildlife friendly. Now we also have on Oracle Road, an underpass and a bridge. We also have funnel fencing, which I'll talk about in a second. And then on Route 86, we have 2 underpasses. Fantastic. And I'm sure some of you have driven under it and not even known what you're driving under. So this is the first wildlife bridge in the Sonora Desert. We're very proud of it. Construction was completed in 2016. So like I said, there's also an underpass. It's about a mile south from the overpass. So animals have their choice of whether they go over the road or under the road. And there's also funnel fencing that helps animals know that they need to go towards one of those structures. Without that fencing, these don't work. They simply run across the road and get hit anyway. So we worked really hard to make sure that this project aligned with construction that was already planned. So it really helps to reduce costs, right? And the overpass is 150 feet wide. That means as an animal crossing it, you can easily be on the overpass and not see, smell, hear the cars beneath you. So it makes animals a little bit more confident when they're crossing. Same for well, we'll get to some photos here in a sec. Here we go. For our underpass. Oh, I know what that is. That's your phone.
That's my phone. Sorry.
So the underpass is just big enough of an arch that animals don't feel too claustrophobic. They feel safe traveling through it. And it's quite large, actually. It's very impressive. So this was the grand unveiling of our underpass structure. And when I talk about funnel fencing, one of the reasons we need it is animals have no idea what these things are. They don't know where they are. You really have to point them towards it. Like I said, otherwise they'll just go straight across the road. We can read these signs, they don't, right? So here's the funnel fencing. It goes into the ground, so some ways into the ground so animals don't just burrow under it. And it goes for several miles in both directions to make sure that, again, animals go towards these safety features. Now, one of our jobs is to go out and check to see if these fences are wrecked, because they do get holes and all sorts of things. And this is actually something that's happening on the 86 crossings. There's quite a few holes, and animals are going right through those and getting hit. So we have all sorts of wild roadkill data coming out of that area now because of the lack of maintenance, unfortunately. RIP. This is Oracle Road, though. We have so many photos like this. If you ever have wild roadkill data yourself that you'd like to share with us, please do. We track it all in an app called iNaturalist. And it actually helps us make arguments for more of these types of structures. So, as gruesome as it is, feel free to share. So a lot of research went into making sure we put these crossings at the right place, including collecting that type of data, right? So, and it's all community science. I mean, we just had huge support from our followers, our volunteers, and our tiny team of 4, right? So it wasn't just roadkill data, though. We also had lots of tagged animals. So this was supported by Arizona Game and Fish. You can see over here on the left, I never know my lefts and rights, and these are deer, and this is tortoise data. So once we opened these crossing structures, we could see some of those dots starting to move to the other side where they'd never moved before. So that was really exciting. In fact, we have significant evidence to show that there are many more deer on the west side of, yes, east, west, left, right, of the crossing structures than there used to be. So we know they're going over there more than they used to, which is fantastic news. So Arizona Game and Fish were just fantastic partners for us, and they still are. So it's a really great example of an agency working together with a nonprofit. So we didn't just, decide where to put these structures out of nowhere. We really worked with some top science and technical teams. And here you can see the construction of the underpass. Quite a large structure again. So going forward, again, they were built in 2016. We are now responsible, our nonprofit, for maintaining the habitat around these structures. Arizona Game and Fish is responsible for the structures themselves, including that fencing. So you can see we pick up trash, we pull buffalo grass, we monitor for holes in the fence, all sorts of stuff. So you'll see us out on that highway all the time. If you go on our website, you can find opportunities to come join us if you love picking up trash. We also address erosion. We plant native species. So here we are with some new plants that we're looking to protect from the deer. A huge amount of work goes into making sure that we maintain these structures for animals. So we have about 2,000 animals crossing per month. We're very happy with that number. Mostly a pretty limited set of species, so a ton of deer, a ton of coyote, javelina, quite a few bobcats actually. We do have some tortoises. We're very excited to see a tortoise actually try to cross before we were even completing the structure. So we had a giant construction crew out on the ground, and we had to ask them to stop construction immediately, let this tortoise make its way through, right? So it was our first customer. We were very excited. It took some time again to know that another tortoise had crossed. So our friend here didn't cross till 2023. So we waited a long time for another customer. We have a huge highlight to share, which is a black bear recently crossed. It was just in the last few weeks. But before that, we'd seen mountain lion, coati, and some other just really fantastic highlight species. So we're very proud of this work, obviously you can tell. Oh, you can barely see, but that's a little fawn making its way across Oracle Road. And we have a smiling bobcat making its way under Oracle Road. But there's a lot left to do, so we're very proud of this project. But we need more. So we need more underpasses in Marana. We need more underpasses and hopefully an overpass someday, but unfortunately we don't expect it to go through on SR 86. We need crossing structures, like I said, over I-10 in 2 places. So mainly Abbott Valley Road area, but also down south, so near Cienega Creek. So we really want to make sure that animals can come out of the Rincon and come down south. And then near you here, again, with that map I showed you earlier, we really need to improve the crossing structures in that area. So here's, again, sorry, I know you can't see it super well over there, but that's that kind of connection circle we're really aiming towards. So right now with the RTA Next budget, it's a 20-year budget again. If we don't get things through now, these animals are going to have to wait another 20 years, and God knows what it's going to look like then, right? Things are going to get a lot harder for species in that time frame. So we're really eager to get as much into that budget as we can. Again, this being a focus area, some work here for Cienega Creek. And then again, this is our project Oracle Road. Here's where we have no structures to help animals cross on the I-10. We need to make some improvements in that area. Because again, without funding, we're looking at another 20 years where animals can't move freely in this area. So we do get asked about other funding sources. Why don't you just ask the feds to pay for this? That's just unfortunately never how it works. So they always expect some local funding, so it's a complement often. Also, federal funding is really new, ultimately, for this type of work. So you've probably heard about crossings maybe for about 20 years. But ultimately, most of that federal funding has just been in the last few years. And in fact, there is a grant right now for Arizona, but does anyone want to guess how much it's for?
$2.
$2. A generous guess. It's for $500,000 and it's for research, so there's no infrastructure involved. And the research is important. That's, like I said, we spend a lot of time on research. So you have to research first, then you get things built, right? But so they're kind of slow here to get that funding from a federal level. One of the reasons, and that's why we've had you look at this sad picture, we don't have large animals that really cause harm to humans when they hit them. So that's where a lot of that federal funding really focuses, is keeping humans safe on the road. That said, you can definitely get hurt hitting a deer or a mountain lion. Go ahead.
How much does it cost for one underpass?
So the question was, how much does one underpass cost? I wish I had that exact figure. I do know that those 2 figures together on Oracle Road, so the bridge and the underpass, were just over $11 million. Now, I-10 is a much bigger road up north than Oracle Road. So Oracle Road was 2 lanes, widened to 4 lanes, 6 lanes, 4 lanes widened to 6 lanes. So during that widening process, they built the bridge. Now, we've had an argument coming off of SR 86 that with the widening, there wouldn't be room left of ADOT land to build a bridge, and then they'd have to purchase land from landowners, which halts the project. It just makes it impossible for them. So you can see that multitude of different reasons these things can go wrong, but we do expect the cost to be over $25 million just for the I-10 project. And again, the RTA Next budget is capped at $25 million. So you can see our conundrum. We certainly need to push for more. And before I go on, I didn't want to make this just an RTA Next presentation because I want to get into I-11, but I will note that originally in that budget, it was approved for $50 million. So we're not coming out of nowhere asking for more. It was $50 million for several years until September of last year when the RTA board sneaked it down to $25 million. So we feel very confident in our ask to push for more. So when we're talking about connectivity, we have a desert fence buster in the room with us. Her name is Rita. She's very good at this work, but we don't only focus on the culverts, the overpasses, underpasses, etc. We also look for other ways we can open up the landscape, and one of them is to remove redundant fencing. So barbed wire fences that animals can't move freely through. Now what happens with these fences is oftentimes an animal tries to go under or over, and they get stuck. So I've saved you some of the gruesome pictures, but frankly, they get completely stuck and they die hanging on the fence, right? So we have a team of very dedicated volunteers who go out and cut this barbed wire, take it to the scrapyard, and we're very pleased to have removed 65 miles, which you can see here in the context of the size of the city of Tucson, 65 miles of barbed wire fencing in the last 4 years. All by hand, incredibly hard work. So that's a huge project as well, and you can just see, again, this is all community science work that's helping these animals. So here's one of our amazing mountain lion photos from our camera program. And my favorites are always the skunks, always. There's 4 different skunk species here in the Sonora Desert, and they're all fantastic. So, and they do love water. And then the books I've handed out, you'll see all sorts of species. Do look out for the badgers. So it's pretty rare to see a badger. And we're always happy when one comes up. So we're going to talk about I-11. Any questions before I jump into that on crossings and
Where is it?
which part?
I-11.
You're just about to find out
Okay.
where it might be, but we're fighting hard for it not to be. Yes, go ahead.
Question, are you working with any of the indigenous tribes on any of their property that are adjacent to people that are in Pima County?
So the question is whether we're working with any of the tribal nations. So SR 86 and some of those crossings, let me see if I can get back to that map here.
That's well, oh no, yeah.
So there's 2 underpasses there. They need more crossing structures. We work hard to support them with any of the science that might help their arguments. That would probably be the most work we do at the nation right now. And it's the closest we get kind of to their land as well. So, but in general, you know, we also partner with them on just making sure that their camera program, their science program, that they have whatever they need from us. Unfortunately, they've had quite a bit of turnover in their wildlife biology team. So we're there to support, you know, as needed and share our data with them if it's useful. So yeah, the door is open.
Collecting data, are you getting assistance from U of A?
The question is if we're getting assistance from the university with our data collection. No, but we actually share our data with them. So the planning school and the some of the natural resources professors do use our data for their own research, which we're really happy about. So yeah. Okay, Interstate 11. Is everyone hanging in there? Okay, this is a lot of information, I know.
Yeah.
I'll try to make this part quick. Interstate 11 is proposed to run all the way from Reno. It's in several sections, all with their own legal situations, all the way from Reno, Nevada, down to Nogales. It does pass right by Tucson, and this is where our drama is based, right? So we're down here. One proposal, and this has taken years to get to the point where there are 2 proposals. So just so you know, there's been many, many proposals in the past. One proposal goes right along, as they call it, co-locates with the existing Interstate 10. So what you know today as Interstate 10 would be expanded upon to include the Interstate 11. The other proposal, and the one that they are favoring right now, so the Federal Highway Administration in partnership with ADOT, would cut right through Altar Valley to Aber Valley. And I could probably just stop there because you can already see the problem, but I won't. I'll fill you in. So that's called the west option. The other through town is called the east option. So we have been strongly opposed to the west option for years now, and we'll fill you in on why. So the very basic is that there's been 100 years of conservation work through those valleys to try to set land aside and preserve it, right? So make sure that that was open space, it wasn't developed. And we've had a lot of support for this. So Pima County is on board. They do not want to see the west option. City of Tucson is on board. Green Valley and Sahuarita is on board. Do not want to see the west option. So we have it in resolution from these local jurisdictions that this is not what they want to see in their own backyard.
Where does that enter from Nevada into Arizona? Where's it?
It goes through Wickenburg.
Okay.
Yeah. The question is, how does it enter from Nevada? So, again, sorry this is so far away for some of you, but here's the proposed route. This is Saguaro National Park in the Tucson Mountains. Directly on the other side, you have Ironwood Forest National Monument, and a huge amount of protected land within this area that would be cut right in the middle with an interstate. So you have Tucson Mountain Park, that's Pima County. And right here is where I was talking about we need some of those crossing structures to make sure animals can move down the Tortolita Fan from the Tortolita Mountains into the Tucson Mountains, right? So now if there's an interstate there, they're going to not really want to be coming this way anymore, and that will be completely fragmented. So we will have lost any chance of getting that kind of circle reconnection.
That is such a redundant plan. I mean, you can just go down 10.
I heard it's a redundant plan. Not only is it longer than going the other way, but it would be more expensive to build through this valley. That's one of our many arguments. And I'm so sorry, we wanted to print some talking points out for you today, but I went into the office and the printer wasn't working. So we tried. We can send them.
Is there not the possibility that I-11 is simply going to be covering I-19?
So one of the questions was, would they not simply have it as a double-decker, essentially? That may be the outcome if they go the route of the east option. So if they stick going this way, it was proposed that there would be a double-decker option. Now, we haven't even really gotten in. They're not favoring the east option, so we haven't even gotten into what might happen if it goes that way. There's been a lot of public consultation on it, but at this point, all energy is focused on making sure they don't go with this west option.
Who is it that's in favor of the west option? It sounds like the cities and everything are on board with, the east option. So who's in favor of the west?
So it would be the Federal Highway Administration. And if you can, that land is much easier for them to acquire than anything running through a major metropolitan area. Quite simply, that's the number one hurdle for us here.
That is ridiculous.
So there's obviously a lot of different arguments we could make. So I mentioned it's longer, it's more expensive. Rita, yes?
Is that pressure from the federal government going to become even more intense in about 10 days?
Asking if this is going to get worse in a few days with the change in administration. So one of the biggest issues we faced was that through this process, we didn't feel like the public consultation was adequate. Now, we expect them to open up their work for public comment again. They're refreshing some of their environmental documents, and we expect them to open those documents up for public comment again. And again, we expect that not to be a satisfactory process, especially with changes in administration, where we expect, under NEPA specifically, that people's rights to public comment may change when commenting on federal projects. So yes, the short answer is yes, we are a little concerned that this could get a lot more difficult.
And those public hearings are being put on by ADOT?
I don't know yet.
Nothing official yet?
So absolutely nothing official yet. So we're expecting something this year, but we don't have more detail yet.
Well, if the west option becomes inevitable, would it be possible to really lobby for having crossings and underpasses and all that? Because it's all planned into the original construction, that's a lot cheaper than trying to add it on later, I would think.
So the question is, if this goes forward, can we make sure to get crossing structures and things like that into the plan? The answer is yes, we would absolutely do that. We would prefer to see it obviously on the east side, because then we can get crossings in there also funded. Well, I know exactly, through RTA and things like that. So either way, yes, we would always push for those structures to be included in a construction cycle.
Is there a way to block I-11 from happening at all if they seem to be aiming toward the west?
So first of all, sad dead mountain line, and that's in the Abra Valley. So here's what we're trying to do to block. So did anyone know that we have a lawsuit active? No, perfect. Okay, so like I said, there were many, many routes under discussion. They settled on 4 or 5, then they whittled it down to 2 in 2021. In 2022, we filed a lawsuit against them, primarily on the basis, like I said, that the environmental review wasn't up to par, didn't follow their own protocols, first of all, and then also the options that they presented, the 2 final options, didn't include a review of what else was possible, including rail. So really, what were the options besides an interstate through here? And then also that the public consultation process wasn't up to par either with their own requirements. So this lawsuit is ran by the Center for Biological Diversity. We are party to it, the coalition. The Friends of Ironwood Forest are party to it, and same with Tucson Audubon Society. So we unfortunately have had to show up in court, and we expect that to happen again. We amended the lawsuit to add that element around endangered species not being adequately protected or considered through this process. And that was largely with that tiny little owl I showed you earlier. The ferruginous pygmy owl was relisted as endangered in 2023, and we felt that the process that they'd gone through with their environmental review had not captured that. So we amended our lawsuit. Come to today. This is very active for us right now, and we are expecting, like I said, new public comment period to open, and we will be rallying everyone in support to get comments submitted sometime this year, and we don't know when, but you will hear about it. Trust me. So you can see here there's an article from our lawsuit. This was back in 2023, but yeah, we're looking for a big press push, big grassroots advocacy push from people. Just make sure that your voices are heard again, that you don't want this to happen. And gosh, we could go through all the reasons. There are many, but kind of intuitively you know this doesn't feel right.
Once you get south of Phoenix, what's the justification for I-11?
It's trucking moving into across the border. Yeah, the question is why do we even need this? And it's just that truck movement, heavy load movement across the border, yes.
What about railroad? The railroad is here already. Nobody's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, these are great questions. You know, why don't we have rail instead? And that's exactly what we asked them to explore in more detail when we first filed the lawsuit, right? That we want to make sure that they're exploring all options, which is part of their legal expectation, you know, in any planning process like this, that you've made sure to explore all reasonable options first. We talked a lot about wildlife crossings. Like I said, this would be detrimental to this area. We have bighorn sheep moving through the area right now that wouldn't be able to anymore. We believe that they would be completely fragmented with their habitats, lots of other animals impacted. And like I said, you have the Tucson Mountains, within them Sonora National Park, Ironwood Forest, the Arizona Desert Museum. So Sonora Desert Museum is right there. This would pass right by there, right? Can you imagine the impact just for that, you know, very valued place alone? So that kind of gives you an update. Here are the species that we are particularly concerned would entirely lose their habitat if this was to move forward. So we have the western yellow-billed cuckoo. We have the Yuma Ridgeways rails. We have the Pima pineapple cactus. And lastly, we have the southwestern willow flycatcher. So you notice the number of birds there, and we often get the question, well, doesn't the bird just fly over the road, right? And same with bats. Doesn't the bat simply fly over? But the issue is that their habitat's been destroyed, right? So there's nothing left for them to fly over or in between. Too much noise, light pollution, too many plants lost, etc. So I'm going to end there on I-11. What I'd like to do is send the talking points we have to Sandy, and she can distribute those. And again, I'm really sorry I didn't have those here today. Did anyone have any other thoughts or questions on that?
Could you write, like, someplace of who the person was who came up with this ginormously stupid idea that we can write to, call?
So one person we do ask that you do get in touch with is the governor,
Okay.
who has unfortunately been in support. And so we've written many a letter. We've also had the county on board to let the governor know that, you know, she should not be in support of this infrastructure. So that would be a good place to start. But we do include instructions on how you can kind of speak up against this.
Okay.
And really that big push, like we said, is coming sometime this year. Save some energy. We're really going to need you. Yeah, and of course, you know, it affects people personally. We can talk about the, you know, the environment, animals, you know, but we had people whose homes would have been cut right in half by the proposal, right? So right through Altar Valley, Ever Valley, we have traditional native lands that would be impacted, right? So there's a human element here that's really important, and I didn't touch on that probably quite enough, but I think you get a good sense. So like I said, here's how you can help, you know, touch on I-11 some. Just stay in touch. I know we're definitely out of time here.
Oh,
but
no, we got time for some more. About 5 more minutes.
Any other thoughts or questions for us? Oh, I put another skunk in because God, I love the skunks.
Yeah, that picture of the bobcat, isn't he like a famous bobcat that keeps finding his way into different habitats?
The one right at the beginning.
Yeah, that one bobcat.
Oh, the smiling bobcat.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, to be honest. We get an incredible number of bobcat photos. You'd be really surprised.
There's one in particular that
Yeah.
goes to Mexico and comes up here.
Oh, gosh.
I don't think it's a bobcat. Isn't it a
Mountain lion.
Jaguar.
A jaguar. That's
Oh,
what-
no, yeah, we would not be seeing jaguars in these structures. We'd be too far north for them, but gosh, we wish we
No,
did.
but, I
So
mean, there is one that comes here regularly.
if we saw one on our cameras, we would not believe it. It would be press release worthy, that's for sure. So, yeah, it'd be very exciting. Any other thoughts or questions from you? I really appreciate you listening to all this. Yes?
Yes, this proposed 11, was that ever an outgrowth of NAFTA?
I don't know.
Because when I look at those, the board of directors, you got Dan Ekstrom in there.
Yeah.
It was early 90s. And my suspicion is probably was part of an outgrowth of NAFTA, 92, 93, as part of the consideration of the binational economic impact that was proposed at the time. And I'm sort of suspicious that's where that's coming from.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a reasonable assumption to make, and the comment was, is this all coming, the Interstate 11, is this all coming out of NAFTA and, economic agreements basically from there, and it's very possible, yeah. I don't know, to be honest, but it's certainly something I could peek into. Anything else? You know where to find us. If you look up Sonora Desert, often we're right at the top. I've really appreciated it today. Thanks so much. I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you. And yes, be sure to share the additions. So, thank you very much. Kate, that was wonderful. Where did she go already? Oh, right here. God, you're too close. Wonderful. Once again, thank you. Got more information than